in 1970. All these bands are pussies going out and they're playing, okay? And they're playing through these little amps and they're playing all this happy horse shit music, right? I walk in and I hear this thunderous, loud sound, but not just loud. It was beautiful and it was pure. And there's Ronnie Dio, and he's singing like an angel high with a perfect, clear voice, and he's playing bass at the same time. And his bass is so pure and clear and thunderous in his tone. And there's you blasting through two Marshall stacks so goddamn loud. And there's Doug with two Sun amps, Mickey, who had keyboards and Leslie's and everything. And it was just the loudest, most pure, beautiful tone I ever heard in my life. It was life-changing. And you were blasting and burning.
I remember that night because that's what I got introduced to you that night too.
Yeah.
You know, before you came up to my house. Marshall amps didn't come out on the Sun amps. You know, they hadn't come out when we started all this stuff. You know, I was using a Sun 100S, a Vox Royal Guardsman, and a Fender Twin Reverb, which was 100 watts, with an external cabinet also.
What people don't understand is, and this is for all the guitar players, bass players, or all the musicians, you know, in the day that he's talking about, there weren't really many pedals. Yes, there were some pedals. The distortion was fuzzbox distortion, which I think the only guy that really used it properly was Hendrix, because he blended in just a little bit of fuzz. Because if you would have turned up too much fuzz, it would kill the regular signal. And it always sounded ratty, but that's all they had. But our sound in the day came from one thing: playing as loud as you could by turning up the front end of the amplifier and overloading, you know, the preamp, overloading the power amp section, and overloading the output transformer, and then of course distorting the speakers. That kind of distortion has weight. You know, it's a difference between a fly buzzing around or an elephant falling on top of you. And that was our sound from the days. Brute force.
Those early amps, you know, there was no preamp section, so you couldn't, you know, get distortion at a lower volume. You had, in order to get distortion, you had to play it loud. You know, and the beauty of those early ones, because they were 2-channel, you could jump
one channel
record and
jump
other. To the other, so you could mix the sound, but you had to play them loud to get the distortion. That guitar originally came with the two PAF type pickups on it, the 52, and of course our friend Doc decided that we needed humbuckers on that guitar.
Right, for more power.
That's right. So he routed it out, put the 2 humbuckers on, of course, you know, tuning heads and the whole deal. Then from that guitar, I went to using Les Paul Juniors.
Growing up in central New York, we played differently. We had opportunities that a lot of the guys that played, for instance, in the city, Long Island, New Jersey, a lot of the clubs there wouldn't let bands bring in their own lights and PA. But we started out touring as youngsters the way we tour today, with buses, you know, trucks. So if you take a look at this picture, I hope that will remind you, that is us on stage with Thunder, okay? And that is a club here in upstate New York. Now look how low the ceiling is, and notice how high the fire was.
I think we blew out the ceiling in one of the places.
Yeah, that was one of them. And if you look at the amount of Marshalls that you had in that picture stuck in there, it was really up to the ceiling in the club.
Well, the club owners, you know, like even with Elf, hated us. They would hire us in a minute because they knew we drew people. We did what we wanted to do, basically, you know, like it or not. And that's the attitude you pretty much have to have, I think. No matter what you're doing, you got to believe in what you are doing and do it.
So what would you tell somebody if they're just getting it in their head like we did?
You know, back in the day, you could put a band together and go play 5 nights a week. You could play, you know, high schools had dances, teen centers had dances, you know,
churches had dancers,
colleges, frat parties, you name it. You know, nowadays it's hard to find a place for these people to get started, you know, to really get out there and play. I mean, you can practice in your garage or your living room, you know, for forever, but it's not like going out and playing in front of people. You know, It's totally different. So, you know, in today's world, you have the internet. So it is in some ways easier for somebody to say, well, I wrote this song and I recorded this song and I'm going to put it out on the internet, people to hear it, you know, and they probably, some people can be become successful, by doing that. Back in our day, we were at the mercy of record labels. It wasn't like we looked a certain way because we felt this was the cool way to look. We looked that way because that's the way we wanted to look. For today's world, all I can say is, if you believe in what you're doing and you can write a song, it doesn't matter what you look like, the music is what tells the story.